So let's take a look at lesson 12 from Unit 2 in 6th grade math, where we're still building comfort with tables of equivalent ratios for our students and kind of how to use those and the importance of finding a unit somewhere in there, that's a much more efficient way to solve these problems typically. So one of the other big ideas in this lesson is that division is the same by multiplying by a reciprocal. So having that conversation in this warm-up and this number talk that you can do 21 divided by 3, but that's the same as 21 times a third. And so helping to build that fluency, we know is helpful for lots to come. Specifically, illustrative math calls out that is helpful for scaling down, so finding equivalent ratios involving values that are smaller, so kind of what we're about to do in this lesson. Later on in the course, relating fractions to percentages. And then when we get to division of fractions in the later unit, also having that depth of understanding comes from fluency with multiplying by the reciprocal, and it's the same as division. So it really is going to continue to build, and I think it's used in 7th and 8th grade equally as much. And so the fluency you're building here has several years worth of benefit to it. So after you finish this number talk, the second activity is comparing taco prices. They mentioned that probably it's worth using two tables here because there are two different situations. And so letting students have two tables to make these comparisons about Noah's price per taco and Jada's family's price per taco. Now, one comment I have that's worth talking about with your team is I wonder if it's worth switching the order and doing activity 3 before activity 2. Because in activity 3, students are given a partially filled in table and asked to reason about how the work is being done. So I think judge based on how your students are faring with finding unit price and unit speeds and all of that. If they've been doing a good job of that, then I think letting them struggle through activity 2 would be helpful. If they've been struggling with it and you think they need a little more scaffolding, then I might switch activity 3 to be before activity 2. So just think through that with your team and use your judgment on that. And again, we are using that idea, what you're going to highlight, and it talks about this in the activity synthesis, is that you may think that we are just dividing by 5 here, but we are multiplying by a fifth. That's the same thing, and that's going to be helpful to have that distinction and thinking of it as multiplication by the reciprocal later on. Activity 4 is an optional activity, but I think it's great. I think it helps us build this idea that ratio table help us get things smaller. So they're going to see that since we are trying to find on this one, the 1 gigabyte. So what's the cost of 1 gigabyte, which is so tiny down here that, again, a double number line is not an efficient tool for using it, whereas this could be an efficient tool. Even if you don't just divide by half each time, if you maybe divide by 4 the first time and get 32 and 8, and then maybe divide 8 this time and get 1 and 4, and then divide by 4 and get 1 and a quarter, then you're there, which is so much more efficient than the idea of finding halfway each time on the double number line. Also, it builds from the idea of Zeno's paradox, and it has you walk the students through moving halfway to the wall each time, and are they actually ever going to get there? So that's an extra good thinking exercise before this. And so the summary does a good job of showing the less efficient way of solving a problem where you are kind of using it more like a table, more like the double number line, versus when you find a unit price, then you are having a much more efficient and saving yourself some time as you work that problem.